Discrete questions, discrete answers.
I love that. And how was your weekend? Was it good?
My weekend was good. It was great. Relaxing, watching quite a bit of TV because it was all football playoffs in America and all kinds of stuff. So it was good. It was great. And
What was
yours?
your? Yeah, it was really. It was my dad's. You know, my dad passed away. It's his
Yeah.
birthday on Friday, so we just had a very low key, and we're going through all the paperwork that ensues once. Yeah, it's just there's a lot. The system over here, the legal system, nothing's electronic. Everything has to be hand done and posted, and there's a real slowness to it. But anyhow, it is what it is. We're just having to follow the system.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, so yeah, it was very low key, but it's been really cold here. So it's the time of year that I just quite like to hibernate.
Okay. When is your next trip?
I am heading to Aruba next week for a few days
Oh,
before I
nice.
then I'm in New York for a week, back for a week, then back in New York for a week. I've got 3 trips to New York in the next 6 weeks, I think.
Excellent. Very good.
And I'm hosting a dinner with Emily Portney tomorrow night in London. So she's here. We've
Oh, London.
Yeah, so we've got a C-suite dinner, female leadership dinner, which no agenda, but just bringing together good people from across the industry.
Excellent. That's very nice. That's good.
It will be very good. Now, I know we've had our prep session, but is there anything at the and before, when the actual recording airs, I'll do a little intro, which is just about you and how we got to know each other. But so today it was really just to dive into the questions. But is there anything that's important for me to share with you? And it really is just us in normal conversation.
No, I mean, listen, I think you and I have spoken enough over the years that you know my points of view or philosophically where I am stuff, and happy to make it a dialogue. And actually, that's probably best. And anything you want to ask me, and I saw your questions; they're all very, frankly, nothing is out of the world, and meaning like I can talk about it. I think I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about Jamie, which is I do have a very strong views and how good he is. And, I worked with him for a long time, and I'm sure he'll say the same about me, which are, what I was surprised when you said everybody said you and Jamie have a unique way to connect. I mean, that's what everybody
Yeah.
always says. That's why people call me. They say, you, Jamie's consigliere. Everybody says, I said, I'm not his consigliere, but I always, got along with him and had our good battles. And it was great. And, but happy to talk about everything.
And it's interesting because that will come up, but there's the fact that you were his consigliere says everything about how much he trusted you and in the advice and the insight that you gave him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know what? I mean, a lot of the stuff it comes across here, and you ask the questions about leadership. It's as long as you're genuine, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, people can see when you are, not necessarily you mean it or speaking the truth, and that's what I used to tell people. It's funny, and this is all before recording, but I remember when I left, I told Viz, I said, either you do it, the worst you can do is pretend that you're going to do it and you care, because it will come back with interest compounded to you otherwise. Either don't do it, or my advice would be do it well and mean it. But that's what I think. At the end of the day, I mean, all the stuff is very simple. I don't think you have to go to Cambridge or Harvard to get common sense.
No.
It's very basic, and you have to mean it and be genuine. And that's what frankly is all about. But we'll talk about it, I'm sure.
And that's what Henry talks about. He had this wonderful quote that a lot of good practice is common sense, not common practice. And
Wow.
it's like there's no magic, there's no mystery, there's no mastery. Sorry, but it's just doing some of those simple things, doing them really well and with consistency.
100%. 100%.
Okay, well, I'll dive in. This is just a very high level intro piece, and then I said it will just be us. We've got to I think, yeah, Sandy gave us about 75 minutes, but we can always cut it short. I'll take the lead from
Yeah,
you.
I am fine. I don't have anything. I told somebody I have a call at noon that I could be late, depending on, which is 2 hours from now. So I'm fine.
Okay, well, I'm excited. And you can be my truth teller in the conversation if I get lipstick on my teeth, because I obviously can't see
Right.
myself. So
Okay.
please, okay, so right, let me begin. Carlos, I am truly excited for you to be a guest on my podcast, Stratospheric Leaders, because I have had the great privilege of getting to know you over the past 4 years, working with your team, and you were also a very incredible contributor to my book, which I've got here, Stratospheric CEOs. And I've had the opportunity to hear firsthand many of your incredible sound bites, your lessons, your learnings. So I know today's conversation, there will be no exception there, and it's going to be packed with many, many golden nuggets. And I think these golden nuggets are for emerging leaders, equally, they're for seasoned leaders too. So I want to dive in and really, first of all, get to know you, not in the seat that you sat in, but you as Carlos Hernandez. So I was going to ask you, if I was to Google search you, what is one thing I wouldn't find out, a lesser known fact about you?
Uh, well, first of all, thank you for having me, Georgie. It's a pleasure to be doing this with you, and I enjoyed reading your book, and a lot of wisdom went into that. A lot of people that I respect who help you in that, and it's terrific. And I hope everybody who is managing anybody or any individuals or groups will read it, because there's a lot of stuff over there, and it's very simple, straightforward, but very meaningful. So congratulations. But what would be a fact to Google me? I'm sure there will be many if they could get into Google. I don't use social media myself as
Yeah.
much, but if there's one, is I'm a big music aficionado, particularly
Okay.
vinyl records. I probably that's my number one thing that my wife would say, indulge myself too much. So that would be one.
And what type of music out of interest? What genre of music do you listen to?
I do like all kinds of music. It depends on the moment and the hour and all that, but I do enjoy classical music. I enjoy jazz, which is probably, if I have to pick one, it would be the number one. And of course, I like all the, rock and roll type of music as well. So I enjoy everything. But if you look at my collection of music, I have from African bands to Asian bands to everything about some of the great symphonies ever made, and I enjoy it. I go there and listen to sometimes here in my office in Connecticut, and I will play some background music of classical music, and just enjoy it. And so that would be probably one thing that is not in my social media page, but as I said, I don't use social media, so they wouldn't know it.
Okay, and I'm wondering, in the decade you've had several decades of your career, and who has been the biggest influence on you, and what do they teach you?
Well, listen, I think there's been different levels and different, phases in my career. First of all, that, people who are always trying to excel, that would be the number one common denominator that I would say. And, people also had to make decisions, along the way, you need to make tough decisions. That's part of a job. And as a leader, and as long as you always make decisions on a fair, equitable basis, you would always feel good about it. Anybody who thinks making tough decisions, for example, letting somebody go, that is very easy to do, has to be crazy. You have to be sadistic. So I learned all that along the way, and there were many people that I obviously would give them credit for having shaped my career over the years. I mean, in the old JPMorgan would be Roberto Mendoza, who taught me when I was really learning, how to talk to clients and understand what clients' needs were, and he was excellent at that. Obviously, in the subsequent years, somebody like Steve Black, who was my boss when we did the merger with Chase, and tough decisions in a tough situation, and had to deal with it, and moments of crisis. And then obviously Jamie Dimon, who was my boss for the last 20 years, and being with him in the foxhole many times and seeing how he conducts himself in the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how consistent he is. So you learn all that. But at the end, and there were many others. I mean, I would learn from people, not necessarily my bosses, but it would be peers of people that work for me, or competitors, by the way. So it's always trying to get the best out of somebody that can make you a better manager, a better leader.
And I think that's a really interesting point, that we can learn from everyone, can't we? It's not necessarily our peers or the people above us, but learning opportunities come in many shapes and forms.
Absolutely, and I think that's probably the mistake that a lot of people think. You can only learn from somebody who's your boss, or somebody who is was there ahead of you. Yes, I mean, they do have some experience and can be very helpful in that respect. But there's so many other things that you can learn from, your peers, the people that they work for you. They can give you feedback to say, hey, you know what, the way you've done it, or X and Y, and colleagues that support you. Like if you're running a business, there is different people who sit at the management team that they can be very helpful in helping you become a better person, a better leader, a better manager.
And when you talk about leaders, I know you've mentored many leaders throughout your career. And what would you say are the top leadership qualities that really drive a successful revenue business?
Well, listen, I do think, and there's a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of confusion about leaders. I do think there is, administrators, their managers, and their leaders. And the leaders obviously tend to be a combination of the three. I think leaders, they, command respect. They don't demand it. They, can inspire an organization, a team, to pursue a mission or whatever is possible, and people feel an attachment to you, right? There is, and you feel an attachment to them. I mean, that is very important. It's not just them to you, but you have to be, for them to feel like, when you say follow me, they're prepared to follow you rather than shoot you in the back. And that people feel like you are with them in the foxhole, and they are with you in the foxhole, and that's very, very important, right? Is you are with them, it's not just them with you. So there is this sort of like sense of we working together, we are aligned, and we're trying to go for the same, or we going for the same mission, the same objectives, and this is all of us together, right? And that's what a leader, in my opinion, does, is which get the most out of the people, make them believe themselves, allow them to realize their potential, and collectively get the most out of the whole organization. So,
and the word that really comes up for me there is partnership. There's that reciprocity. To your point, it's both sides bring that level of commitment, and there's trust on both sides.
yeah, I mean, listen, a good leader makes everybody feel like, yes, I might be the GP, I might be the 51% vote, but at the end of the day, it's all of us. It's it's our mission. We all have the same purpose. We all have intentionality of what we're trying to do, and it's a collective effort. And to me, that's the sign of a good leaders. And listen, and these people that believe what you're trying to do, or they all totally aligned. And if they weren't, hopefully you get them before, so everybody understands that we are on a mission with the same kind of like purpose and objectives. And if you do that, I think everything is much easier, because well, there's always going to be some adversity. Oh, you know what, you didn't think, COVID comes, and you know what, we have to change whatever plan it was. And it's much easier if everybody's like, okay guys, we were ready to be in Europe, but we're going to have to change because now it's somewhere else. We have to change plans. And it's not like, oh, well, I'm like, I already have all this stuff and it's set up, because people understand that, it's much easier to move around. And when I made the comment about Europe, I mean, like, it was on the plans, but the plan have to change. Okay, so we
Yeah.
all have to change, and it has to be a totally different mission right now. And I think that's with leadership, it becomes much easier to do all those, whether it's, the strategy that we set up ourselves to do, to embark on, maybe was the wrong one. We all got it wrong, but it's easier to then get everybody, rather than pointing fingers and saying, oh my God, I told you so, we should have done it different. And I think the more you can align that, it's much easier to do.
And if we could just touch on that, because it feels a really important piece around that adaptability, because the world is moving faster than ever before. It's unpredictable, it's uncertain, it's highly volatile. And I know one of the challenges for many leaders is, leading through these times. How do you lead when everything is moving so fast? And through your career, you've led and navigated through many crises. What would be the strategies you would share with your team in terms of best practices?
Well, listen, I do think that that's where I go to the alignment and everybody to be on the same page and on the same book. That's, I will
Yeah.
make the comment. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And this is a purpose. And if we have to change it, it's much easier than when everybody's just a collective understanding of what we were trying to do and why we have to change it. And I think, in moments of crisis, the last you want is to be people, hey, I go my way, you go your way, and everybody's trying to find the recipe for what we need to be doing. And so it's easier to sort of collect everybody and say, okay, this is what we are, what are we going to do? And these are the reason why. And people understand before what we were trying to accomplish and now why we have to change it or pivot to whatever we need to do. And that's why for me, that's where the leadership comes, is so important, because it's not just executing whatever mission, whatever strategy, whatever goals or plans you have, but if you have to change it, it's much easier for people to understand why you have to change it, because everybody knew before this was the reasons why, and these were the elements that we were focusing on, and these 2 or 3 have changed, and that's why we need to pivot right now. And that's why I think it's paramount that you create that sense of collective ownership, right? That people feel that I'm an owner. I'm an owner of these. What we're doing, I am part of it, and I have something to do with the output, with the not just the execution of what we're doing, but what will come out. It is my doing, and so I do think that is very, very important to do, particularly in the moments that we are now. It seems to be like every other whatever year or 2 years there's a new crisis, right? And as I always used to tell people, whatever crisis is today, you can write a manual, but in next time it won't be the same one. But some of the elements will be the same, meaning, okay, how do we act? What do we do? What are the next ones? How do we communicate to ourselves and then to the rest of the organization, so everybody understands what we're trying to do? And there's a very complete, sort of like understanding where we're trying to go. To me, I will tell you the best was, one of the examples was, for example, during COVID, when it came out, it was hard. Nobody knew which way it was going, and what's going to happen. Is this going to be 2 months, 3 months, 3 years? I mean, obviously, now we all know with the benefit of hindsight. But I remember like writing a message to the whole organization. Pretty early on. I probably was like, 4 or 5 days, maybe a week. We don't know where this is going. We don't know it, but collectively, this is what we're going to do. And this is the things that all of you can do to help us and, service our clients, which is what we wanted to do. What you can do to obviously help ourselves, particularly some members who might be in places that are very impacted, or, junior people who might be by themselves and all that. So, but it's sort of like how you get people to sort of rally and feel like, hey, this is the mission, this is what we're trying to do. And I don't know what the next crisis will be. I'm sure there will be many, it seems to be now all the time, but it's how you can get the organization and the people who are with you at the table, the immediate, sort of like partners. And I call it partners because they're very critical to that, and then cascade that into the system.
And listening to you, you once shared about transparency is equity, and I really hear that coming through there. That in those moments of crisis, explaining your why, why we have to pivot, so everyone has a level of understanding around what the course of action you're taking, what the purpose around that is.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, in everything else, in everything you do, right, transparency is critical because people understand, hey, that's what we do in it. I mean, this is the inputs I have or we have to make this decision. And if you, for whatever reason, think that this is the wrong conclusion, say it now. And because we want to make sure this is for the best, for the interest of all of us. And I think transparency in all fronts, and that's where it's important also you create an environment where people feel that they can give their views without any, oh my God, I'm going to look like an idiot, or there's consequences if I go against a decision. I think that is so paramount to creating an environment that people feel, again, I go back to, I can realize my potential. I can do, I am capable of doing that. And sometimes, I mean, listen, I used to tell people, the reason why you're sitting at the management table is because, I mean, you have something to contribute, and the shame is on me if I don't listen to you. But I also, it's all of us to do it collectively. I mean, that's frankly the basis that you need to really create as an environment for people to succeed, for the organization to thrive.
And I'd love to pull the thread on that. Like, how do you create that environment where there is that openness, there's that receptiveness to ideas? Because I often think people more junior in an organization can sometimes, there can be a level of apprehension if they have a contrarian view to their leader. So how do you create that level of openness where people feel they can express their thoughts and ideas?
Well, listen, I always will welcome that. And I will tell people the reason why you are sitting at the table is because I do believe that you have value to contribute. What I will never accept is you go around. I mean, there is a meeting, and that's what the meeting we're going to talk about it. If there is something, that you have to share, oh my God, I have to come see you after the meeting and talk to you. That is not in the best interest of the organization right now. If it's something that is totally personal, or of course I understand it, but if it's, oh, I disagree with this view, oh, I don't think that way that he or she is expressing that strategy is wrong. So how you create that environment that people feel they can always share their views when you are sitting all together, myself and everybody in the management team, and there is no consequences to that, right? I mean, the whole thing is like, we want to get the best strategy, and then is how do we get the people to execute on that. And it's much better if we all have a very clear view of what we're trying to do, rather than sending mixed signals and ambiguity in the system, because that only creates chaos. And frankly, the end result is either you don't deliver, or late, and inefficient and all that. So that would be the key there. But it's, how do you create that environment? For me, it was always like, I would share people, rather than, I mean, I would not be like, oh my God, that's silly, stupid decision and all kinds of stuff. It's like, and that's why meetings are important. But that's also, I do believe that if you have meetings that are too many people and, too long, is they don't lend themselves to really get to the shaping up this kind of like, outcomes.
Yeah, I think with meetings, I think many people find themselves in meeting overwhelm at the moment, and so many, direct debits of their time. So there is something there about being thoughtful around the length of meetings, and to your point, how many people have to be in that meeting. Jeff Bezos has I mean, the way he approaches meetings, he talks about pizzas. There should never be more people in a meeting than two pizzas worth. So in order that, again, there's sharp focus, there's attention, and it's not diluting the focus of the meeting.
Yeah, well, listen, and I don't know what he talks about. I know his comment on the pizzas. I don't know if he's talking about an Italian pizza, which is very thin and very small, or the American pizzas, right? So, but I wouldn't be too prescriptive in the sense of the size and all this, because I give you an example, right? I mean, there's a crisis and the global financial crisis, and we have to decide, hey, collateral and all these, and what do we do it? We need people from risk, we need people from finance, we need people from accounting, we might need salespeople, but it's having the relevant people at the right time.
Yeah.
So it's not like it has to be 4 or it has to be 15. I mean, listen, some of our meetings, for example, in 2008, and when we're dealing with all the crisis and, what kind of collateral, the meetings could be 20, 30 people because, hey, what are we doing with X? What's happening over there? Because that one has implications to something else. But it was kind of like, okay, get it on. And after like whatever, 45 minutes, we will have an outcome and, strategy. And this is the plan for the day. And talking about crisis, every day was changing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have a meeting at 7:30 in the morning, then one meeting at noon, one meeting at 5 p.m. to sort of compare notes where we are. Well, something came out here. But it's as long as why you are in here, this is the purpose of this meeting, and this is why your relevance is critical to what we're trying to accomplish. And I would say, but having just meetings for the size of having a lot of meetings or a lot of people don't lend themselves to really good outcomes, in my opinion.
I love what you said, relevant people at the right time. That feels like a great soundbite. And there's some intentionality. That means being very deliberate around who's in there, what's the purpose, why they're there. So everyone's in there because it's intentional.
100%. Listen, and I think, if it's COVID crisis and we have meetings, of course, we need more the people in the credit department because everybody's asking for facilities, loans, and all that. So we need those people over there, or approving some of these decisions, and it's having the right. I go back to people at that, and you would say, well, all the people were not there, and why? Because it's not critical for them to be there. They would like to be there, but it's really more like we're trying to get to the right outcomes, and we're trying to get the relevant, not trying, we will get the relevant people there so we make the right decisions with all the right inputs.
Yeah, and when we think about decisions, how do you make decisions when everything is moving so fast? Because as leaders, we're having to make decisions with incomplete data. You don't always, there's no crystal ball to know, what's coming. So how do you make those decisions when everything is moving so fast?
Well, listen, I don't think most of particularly when things are moving and it's a lot of crisis, you never have 100% perfect information, right? What you need to get is as close as you can, whether, I don't know, 2/3, or you call it whatever, percentage is. But that's why for me is critical that, hey, you solicit as much input from the people that could really have experience or could have something to add to that. And that's back to how do you create an environment of people feeling like I am an owner? This is like Carlos's business. We all own it together. And so I would make a decision. I used to take people, say, I'm the GP, but at the end of the day, you all are with me trying to solve the same issue here. And so I would solicit, and then I would share with teams and say, that's what we're going to do for these particular reasons. And I know some of you share these views, some of you think it should be this strategy B, others and these. And let me tell you why we're going to go into that. And that is so critical, and particularly sharing that with the team, why you selected whatever decision it was. And I said, these are the inputs I have, these are the different options, why we did it this way, so people understand that's how we do. And it's not like you wake up and you just capricious about it and said that's what I'm going to do, or what, I ask you for your input, but who cares? I'm going to decide what I'm going to do. I mean, it's always how do you set the environment and the tone that people feel owners of that. And that to me is so critical for execution of any of these strategies, and whatever it is, whether it's in moments of crisis is even more important, but anything, that people feel why we're doing it. There is some intention over there. And so when somebody asks them, why are we doing X and no Y? they have an answer, and that cascades into the organization. Why are we deciding to do X payments in these particular 3 countries, but we're not doing it in these 2 countries? Well, for these particular reasons,
Yeah.
and so people will understand, the mission, and it was easier to explain. Some people might not agree with that, but that's why we have to do it. And in everything we do, there's always prioritization. I mean, in our jobs, I used to tell people, I said, the biggest challenge for us or decision is deciding the things we don't want to do rather than the things we want to do. And that is, the mistake that everybody always makes, is they put a lot of things on the menu, and all the priorities and all that, which is, in my opinion, is crazy. It's sort of like lends itself to sort of like, poor execution, poor results, lack of commitment from the organization, and that would be my sort of like take on that.
And I think Steve Jobs talked about the kind of the power of, he had the power of like 3 priorities. Anything more, he shared that it dilutes people's focus. And I think this is another critical piece here that you've mentioned about prioritization. I think leaders now, there are so many things they can do, and the challenge is really discerning. Where's the highest and best use of their time? So how did you approach prioritization? How do you discern between all the things you could do?
Well, listen, everything, obviously, it depends on what the moment is or what the situation is. We want to invest more in this particular region or that particular product, and because my view is always, I want to win the war, but to win the war, I want to win battles. And you go, and which one has the most significant impact to what we will do, which one will put us in a position to really do more, and then I go back to these prioritizations. I mean, if I start doing X here and I number 1 over there, but in the scheme of things is totally irrelevant to what we're trying to do, or might not really have the impact. In our business, for example, in investment banking, is always, okay, what sectors do we want to prioritize more, or what, of course, we want to be number 1 everywhere, in every country, in every region, but it's humanly impossible, and there's always limitations from, do we have, first of all, do they have the right wallet, the right opportunities in those particular places, the right bankers? And some of these go through cycles. Where are we on the cycle and all that? And so all that is the prioritization. And I go back to, deciding the things we don't want to do is more difficult than the ones we want to do, because it becomes very clear, like I said, well, these are the 3 sectors that we have to dominate. And if we don't do them well, guess what? It doesn't matter. We can be number 1 in X, Y, and Z, but we will be average in something else, right? Or regions. These particular regions are paramount to, if you want to be number 1 in investment banking, for example. And so making all those decisions are to me, so important, the prioritization, because in our jobs, anyone, whatever it is, there's a lot of stuff that people want to do, and everybody feels it's like the Santa Claus wish list, the like kids are writing everything, but you have to prioritize. It's a fact of life. There is finite amount of resources, whether it's time. Forget about it, whether you have the money. You can have all the money, but it's time, ability to execute, and most importantly, what's the ramifications? What's the secondary effects of many things that you do, and that could have greatest impact on either your staying power or your ability to really, win the war rather than just win little battles.
Yeah, I love what you've shared there, and I want to pivot back to the people side, because I've shared with you on many occasions that I've met many people in industry who've all been mentored by you. So and people speak to your incredibly high EQ, and I suppose my question there is around, how do you choose your spots of people to nurture and cultivate?
Well, listen, I don't think that is something that I have an algorithm to who do you pick or not. And I always will tell people, help yourself, and people will help you. I will help you. Do you have in you the desire to really yourself excelled, and I will give people feedback, and some of them will take it, and will run with it and make the most out of it. And those are the people that, I'm sure they'll tell you I was their mentors, and many still at the company, many have left over the years. I would always be, people, I'm a believer of giving feedback real time, meaning, and I don't mean feedback like feedback doesn't have to be, oh, things to develop. It could be, my God, you were so great into that meeting, or what you did is fantastic. You know what? We should really learn how we can use that. Or I would take it myself, and my God, that's a good way to make a presentation, all that. And but again, I go back to, you say, how do you relate to it? How would, I think people need to believe in that you're being genuine, that you
Yeah.
really care about themselves, I mean the individuals and all that. But at the end of the day, is if they're working for me or in the organization at JPMorgan, that is a win-win. It's for everybody. It's for the
Yeah.
organization, it's for the individual, and certainly for me, having more capable people would only make the job easier, right? If they're somewhere else, the only thing that changes is like, it's not for the benefit of JP Morgan, but it's helping somebody. Why, you can go from point A to point B. What are the things that maybe you should be doing more, and things that you should be doing less to make you more effective. But it's all about, people need to believe in you, and I do feel very strongly on that, how genuine you are, that you really mean it. It's not just wasn't it for me.
And I think that genuine piece, people can see through it, can't they? Where if the words and the intention, they don't match. And when it comes to feedback, you talked about, real time, being genuine. I think there can be an aversion at any level where people feel challenged by giving the unvarnished truth of fear of how it may land. What are the strategies that you would advise people, when you're giving that real-time feedback, when it's more of the constructive nature?
Yeah, listen, first of all, I do think it's much, much easier to do it real time than to wait until, for example, the end of the year or whatever people do, end of the quarter, because it has more of an impact. People can see it right away, and it's less threatening. It's not like, you giving it to me because with the intention of, either I won't get paid X or I won't get promoted and all these. So it's in my view, that's the most, frankly, powerful way to do it. And I think, as long as you always do it in a respectful way too, particularly with things to develop or to focus on, it is much, much easier to do it, throughout, for example, the year, or whenever you're with somebody, or, hey, let's have a lunch, and let me tell you some of the stuff that you are X not doing, you should be changing it, or you should be doing more of X and less of Y. And I think that is something that, as long as you do it, now it requires commitment from your part, in my case, because you have to be prepared to invest. And I look at that as an investment rather than an expense of time.
Yeah.
You're investing in somebody you want them to, because the more successful they are, the easier it is for my organization, for the team to
Yeah.
do well. And if somebody's sitting at a very important job, they're there for a reason, because we believe that they are, capable of doing a lot. And so investing time into that is the payoff is so significant if you get it right. So, and I would say, it's not an expense of time. I mean, a lot of people will think of, my God, I would rather, not be doing this kind of stuff, or be doing something else. But I look at that more as an investment than an expense.
And the fact that it's real time, to your point, it has that greater impact because people can contextualize. Like the example that you're referencing is front of mind for them.
Yeah, and I listen, at the end of the day, and I think it's always a two-way street. I think it's also, people should be upon them to also say, hey, from time to time, I know that many people that you mentor and all that, they will, call me and say, I would like to have lunch with you. I would like to get your guidance or advice. Absolutely. And for me, that's, I go back to the investment part. And, it is an investment that you get it right, the payoff is multiple times the return on investments. And I mean, payoff is for the organization, the results, and it's not a one-off, but it's, compounds over time, right?
Yeah.
If people learn and do it. So that's my take on it.
And out of interest, what's a piece of feedback you've been given about yourself that's kind of stuck with you over the years?
Well, listen, I have gotten many, many over the years, right? From, early years and even, the later years. Probably I spent too much time on people, sometimes just cut it off and don't give them, too much the benefit of the doubt, which, is probably fair in some cases. But, if that's, where do you go back and say, well, it's only 3 months, it's only 1 year and all that. So that would be one that people would say to me, uh, uh, something that should have done more. Two is also, in my sort of like deliberation or sometimes trying to get people, like everybody, takes everybody's input that is the relevant people input. I mean, take the 2 cents into the whatever decision that some people might say, well, it takes too long, we should just go. And, that tends to be, and again, it's always a judgment, right? It could be people who feel I had it right and let's go, let's don't wait anymore. Let's just, push for it. So those would be some feedback that is, relevant, but it's, at the end of the day, as I always, say to myself, I did this for so long. It's hard to change the stripes in a tiger, right? This is what works for me, and it was good, and but it's always learning. For me, it was always everything. Every year there was something new to learn.
And I know in some of our conversations we've talked about the importance of that trusted tribe and having truth tellers. It could be peers, family, friends, but people who you can count on in those moments who will also shoot straight. They'll tell you kind of what it is and how it is.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there was always people which I appreciate, and that worked for me or were peers. A lot of them were people that worked for me, and they would say, hey, you should be doing X more of these, or you're giving too much the benefit of the doubt to somebody else. And that was, always took it, to heart, because it was genuine, and it was without any. You can make the case that, hey, I could have just taken the decision like, oh my God, I'm the boss, and I'm going to do whatever I want. But that is, frankly, a blessing to have people like that along the way they're willing to share with you and give you feedback. What I would call it, the good, bad, and the ugly. Like the real. The stuff that you need to focus on. And again, the more real time you get it, the more valuable it is, in my opinion.
I 100% agree with you there. And a minute ago, you referenced about kind of bad behavior, and I think all organizations, have a number of toxic people in there or poor performers. How do you manage those people?
Well, listen, I think in every organization you will have some people that will not be everybody's cup of tea, right? So it will be a very, it's not my style and all that. But you need all kinds of people in an organization. If everybody was the same, then you'll get the same kind of like results all the time. It wouldn't be, the one who says, "Oh my God, we should be investing in something else, or we should be pursuing another opportunity." How you talk to them, how you can make them understand, like this is the stuff that you shouldn't do, or put parameters in terms of the the limits. And I also will say to people, listen, the organization, either if you continue to be a jerk, either the organization will push you out, or you will push yourself out. I mean, there's, you take your whatever decision you want, time will come. And listen, there's always people that you say, I probably should have done more on this stuff. But that's always kind of like sort of like second guessing, because, you know, they did have some positives. People are not in the system just because they only had negatives.
Yeah.
You have some positives. The question is, when do the negatives outweigh so much the positives that is so detrimental to the organization and to the people?
Yeah, I think that's so it's and one of the things you've mentioned to me before as well is about just being fair and equitable, like having that as the kind of the every time you approach these conversations, coming from a place of making, am I being fair? Am I being equitable?
Yeah, and listen, that is the thing that, for me, as long as I always felt I can make decisions, there was always with that intention. It was never, I have an angle, or this is good for me, but it's not good for them. It's always something that I could feel like I put my head in my pillow at night and feel like I did the right thing. To wake up in the morning, I did it, on principles. I mean, there wasn't anything that was, my own selfish interests or somebody's, agendas.
Yeah, there's I hear listening to you there. It's about being clear on your values and making sure your decisions, your choices, your behaviors. There's an alignment there with your values in life.
Yeah, and then listen, there's always going to be, again, in an organization, you have everything, right? I mean, these organizations are so large, you have everything, I mean, from, all kinds of styles of people and all kinds of resources and all that. So the question is, it's like a society. How do you make, the most out of it? How do you get the most out of people, the positive side, and focus on that? And how do you know, focus or make them address some of the negative energy or the negative reinforcers that people have. But to sort of say, what, we're only going to hire everybody who has these particular attributes. I mean, it would be similar to, we're only going to hire certain type of people who are, whatever, white males, or only went to these type of schools, and it would be the same to me. So it's how do you get an organization that is an amalgamation of different type of skills, talents, and that collectively you get the best out of everybody.
Yeah. And to your point, if there are people who have persistent bad behavior, either it's about them self-selecting out, or they will be pushed.
And that's been my experience over the years. At the end of the day, either one of the two will happen.
Yeah. And when we first met, I came and did a talk to your team, a number of your kind of senior bankers, and I imagine with that group, there's a lot of stallions in the room. There could be big egos, and so how do you manage those big egos?
Well, listen, I think it's, I used to joke about that being in my business. Sometimes it's managing like a talent agency, like it's everybody's like the talent and divas and stallions, and you talked about it, but it's always back to relating to each individual on, what they can do well, what they can bring to the table, and sort of like, allowing them be what they are, as long as, as I said, there's some parameters. You can go from point A to point F, and within that you can go in, and there's no electric fence. There is, issues that you get zapped, and you need all that, and I work with all of them, treated everybody with respect. That should be the number one sine qua non, first and foremost. Everybody should be treated with respect. It doesn't matter who they are. And people know that that's the case. And, I don't have any intentions. I didn't have any intention to hurt anybody other than advance everybody's careers. And, because if we do it and we are collectively better, we will be the number one, and we be the competitor that everybody wants to beat. And I think that's where you focus on. But listen, it is a nature where all people with different skills and egos, and everybody's, as I said, it's like talent agency or sports. Everybody's like everybody's the number one. And but collectively focus on each, like, you number one, but collectively we are trying to get the most out of all of you. And that's what I did. I mean, people say to me, you can relate to people. Well, I can relate to everybody, because as long as you treat everybody as a human being, like, there is this is no star system. There is, I am like you like me, and by the way, he or she is like the two of us. And so as long as you treat everybody with respect, and I think it's much easier to do that.
And how do you create that collegialism or the trust between them? When you've got these big egos, but they come together as a leadership team. How do you create, that connection between them?
Well, listen, I mean, you try to, they will never be perfect, right?
Okay.
Because, it's frankly, if anybody tells you at the end of the day, everybody gets along and is kumbaya, I think they're crazy. But that's where I go back to, I would, what should be the strategy? Okay, you have an input here. She has an input, he has an input, and we all go there. So everybody knows that's what we're trying to do. That's why the whole discussion of the after the meeting discussion is, in my opinion, totally unacceptable. Because
Yeah.
then you create a sense that somebody has the most influential, or, can go behind the scenes and change it. But if we do it over there, everybody knows that at the end of the day, we're all in the same playing field here, right? Your input, her input is, as equally valuable, and we're going to go and execute based on what we said. And as I said, I'm the GP, but I'm only 51%. We're all on the same, boat here. And that's how you can create this sense. It's never going to be perfection, because you know what? These are humans. Everybody, there's
Yeah.
always going to be somebody who he or she believes, like, I I'm the one, I'm flawless, I invented this whole thing. Oh, it should be my decision only. But it's how do you get, and that's always going to be the case, in any organization. I don't think you can get everybody to sort of feel like, oh my God, we all aligned 100%. But it's how, why you got to that decision. Your input came into this. And yes, part of it was, I used to tell people, you have a vote, but when we come to the decision, we all agree, you have no veto.
Okay, I like that.
Everybody has a vote. But when we go out, and by the way, we all agree, we all debated, there's no veto.
And that strikes me as being the conversation happens in the room, but when we leave the room, there's an alignment. We are all, you use the boat analogy, we're all rowing in the same direction, same mission, same vision, same strategy.
100%. 100%.
And what comes up for me is, you've led many, best performing teams who are the best of the best. How do you stay the best of the best? Like, what's the mindset? Because in order that people don't dip into complacency.
Well, listen, I think what can kill a team when they're doing so well, or any organization, is complacency or arrogance. If you become arrogant, they're both equal, both of them. So it's like, how do you go and, when you are performing at the top, that's where it's more important to be brutally honest. What are the things that are not working? And then be granular, go into the issues that are not working. And, try to sugarcoat issues is the worst you can do, because, you can say, hey, we're not doing as well in technology M&A. These are the reasons why. And we can come out with all different reasons why. But getting into the granularity is what is important, particularly when you are performing well, because the tendency is to sort of like, high fives, everything is wonderful, everything is great. And, you know, everything is possible as long as you can, go and say, hey, we are not doing as well in that particular region or in that particular sector. Now, what are the reasons for it? And then you go in and then you diagnose the issue, and then you come out with a plan and execution, and that's how you keep improving. So it keeps moving and getting yourself better, getting the most out of each individual and the organization as a whole.
Lance Ugler, who I know we both know well, he talks about raising the bar. That's one of his mantras. You know, every day, how do we get better? And he talks about incrementalism. It's you know, it's those small compounding things that to improve, to have greater influence and impact. And then he talks about widening the gap, because when you are that number one, it's right, you know, raise the bar and then widen the gap. And I really liked his analogy on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, like it's like, like JPMorgan is whatever number one financial institution, but there's areas where we're not number one, or the CIB, we were, green, top three in almost every box, but there would always be 5 or 6 that we were red or amber. Why? What are we going to do? Now, some of them is intentional, because we say if we do that, whatever, we didn't want to be there for whatever reasons. That's a very different decision. Actually, that's great. We're executing according to our plan, but it's really the ones like, that's not really what we would like. What do we need to do? Is that incremental, and then you do it, and you do it consistently, and have a plan. Back to the prioritizations. What are the things that you are going to be focusing on, and the priorities, and that's where the incrementalism comes, and that's how you get better. You keep raising the bar.
And to your point, having a plan, because I think often people can come away, they can be great strategies, great words on paper, but then how are we going to execute? What's the plan? How are we going to measure ourselves against that execution plan? And where are we going to course correct? If we need, because sometimes when more data becomes available, it's like, actually, we need to go to that plan B.
100%. And that's where, that's why this whole thing is, what is it that we're trying to do? How are we going to do it? And then how are we going to measure it? See, if you have no ability to measure it, then it's a lot of waste of time, right? I mean, it's how are we going to say, yes, it's working or it's not working, and on a regular basis, not like, a year, 2 years from now, but how are we going to be, are we doing what we said? Oh, we don't have the right bankers in that particular sector or region or country, whatever. Okay, let's go do it. Okay, after we do that, what are we doing? And then takes time, and okay, so, but you have something that you can measure and see the progress, and that's how we did it. And I mean, obviously it wasn't just me, it was the whole system and the organization who were focusing on that.
There's a great saying, what gets measured improves, because it's drawing attention to, what are the areas we need to spend more time, energy, and focus on.
Yeah, and particularly, with the tendencies, many times organizations, they try to sugarcoat the issues, right? And that's why the granularity, these Lance's comment about incrementalism, what is the things? And go as granular as you can, and then measure it, because it's very easy to sort of like hide sometimes issues, particularly when you're successful, or when you have some businesses that are doing so great. I mean, people say, well, you're number one. I mean, yeah, but we're not number one in X, Y, and Z. Why? And so that's why I think it's important that you are honest, and when I say honest, brutally honest about the issues, and then most importantly, diagnosing the issues and how are you going to go about fixing them.
Yeah, the
And
how
people know
piece.
it. And people all understand. Back to the comments from the beginning, that's the mission. That's how we're going to do it. We're all on the same page and on the same book.
I've heard a client, they use the word the CRO as the chief repetition officer. And sometimes as leaders, you need to be that repetition. And this is the strategy, this is the mission. So everyone in the organization, irrespective of what level, can speak to the overarching strategy of the firm.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly the same point.
And you shared the word, or used the word impact. And there was a saying that you had that your impact should be like dipping your hand in water. Can you share a little bit more around that saying?
Well, that's really comes from a very famous poem that I said your impact, when you leave. I mean, the example is, put your hand in a bucket of water. You can make all the noise and take your hand out. and then very quickly you see how the water is at the same level that was before. So that's the way, you know, the organization should be. So, and I told my team when I left, I said, you know, I can make whatever noise, I can make whatever I want, but this is the way to see it. You guys are all capable. This is a fantastic organization, and and if it's not X, somebody else will rise to the occasion. But that's the intention. It's more to be like, it's more to how do you control your own ego, you know? And because if you think you are, you know, the one, I mean, that's a good example. Like, you know, just see how quickly the water goes back to its level. You might just take yourself and make a lot of, you know, noise and move it around, but that's the comment on it.
And when you think about the, you know, your retirement, how did you think about succession? How far in advance before you left were you thinking about succession? How did you identify your successors?
Well, listen, obviously we thought about it over the years, and there was many plans. I mean, it would not be just one, many plans, and it wasn't just me. Obviously, there were other people in the organization who have an input on that, and you know, over time, it will be how people will come in and do it. And listen, you know, I always say to people, like, you can have all kinds of plans and you can have everything that you think you will be the right solution, but it won't be until you're there. It's no different than sometimes, you know, when people say, well, why did you put that person in that job, or why she got that one? I say, well, because you know, you wouldn't know until they get on the seat and then they do it. You know, I'm sure you hear a lot of people say, well, Carlos elevated many people or promoted people who, you know, they didn't think they were either, you know, whatever, you know, a woman or somebody, you know, diverse background or whatever. And my view is, unless we do it, we will never know. So, you know, we went through all that. And, you know, I always tell people, like, DNA hasn't been reinvented yet, so there will not be another Carlos Hernandez. To the best of my knowledge, maybe you can say some attributes or maybe some of the weaknesses and all these, but whoever is in there is going to have to do their own, you know, build their own organization and do it, shape it the way they think they want to be shaped. Whether they're good leaders, that's going to be the question, and the organization will judge over time. But you know, succession is something that we thought about it, we think about it. There's many different permutations and all that, but not until you go into you can have a strategy in the locker room, but not until you go into the field, you see whether it did work or not.
Yeah. And I'd love to move over to Jamie now, because you've worked with him for many years. You're, you know, highly regarded as being, you know, a consigliere and ally to him. And I suppose I'm curious around, you know, what skills did you learn from him? Yeah, what skills did you learn from him?
Well, listen, I do think, you know, Jamie is arguably the best leader of, you know, all the big corporate leaders. And I was so fortunate that I worked for him for a long time, very closely, I should say. There are many attributes I could say on Jamie, right? It's the most genuine person that you can see. Jamie is like, you know, so high on EQ. He can relate to anybody, from presidents and Her Majesty the Queen to, you know, the people at the entrance of JPMorgan, bankers and tellers and all that. So he's very genuine, and you know that he's himself and he means it, and he treats people with respect. He is somebody who's always into the details and talking about getting the most out of you. He always, you know, makes you realize, oh, back to the incrementalism, I can do more, you know, because he would always raise the bar, always. And to the, you know, the best of the individual and certainly the organization. And he's somebody who is very strategic, very forward-looking, very visionary. He's always, you know, knows every, you know, he's always everything is never like just a comment. It's like, well thought out, well researched. So it's always raising the bar, which is fantastic in a sense that, what, it gets the most out of me as an individual, but obviously the organization.
And there's such, as I listen to the quality, the high IQ, the, into the details, always raising the bar, that visionary piece. And that high EQ, I mean, that it comes up with a lot of people I speak to at JPMorgan when they describe your leadership style. Do you think EQ is something that's innate, it's kind of part of our DNA, or do you think it's something that for leaders, it's something that can be learned?
I think you can learn it. I don't think you are born with that. Listen, and I used to tell people, the more senior you get, the more EQ you need. You didn't get to be an MD at JPMorgan or an ED if you didn't have IQ. I mean, these processes are so competitive. You went there as an associate. So IQ comes as a given. EQ is the biggest challenge, and it's more challenging the more senior you get into the organization, because you need to relate to anybody at different levels, whatever part of the organization. And I go back to, people can relate to you, understand, not because I'm an investment banker or I'm like, whatever it is you call it, stallions and all these, but it's that I'm really care when trying to see what's best for the organization, for you. And I'm genuine. I am, treating people with respect. Talking about Jamie, that's probably one of the greatest attributes of Jamie, right? And people know it. People sense it. You don't have to believe, like, you can talk the talk and say it, but do you walk the talk? Do you really see it? And I think those are, in my opinion, the things that will make all these EQ. I mean, can you learn it? Yes. Can you? But you have to be genuine. The worst you can do, the worst is pretend that you mean it, because if you don't, it will come back to you in spades, and it compounded in interest from the people. So either do it well, or don't do it. Don't pretend.
And how do you think you demonstrate care and respect? Like, how does that show up in action and behavior?
I mean, listen, there's a lot of respect. You can go from very simple to I disagree with somebody's decision or whatever. I don't go and, denigrate them in public or in a meeting. Oh my God, you're so stupid. How could you even think about it? Do it in a respectful way. That could be one way. Another one could be when somebody's really has some struggles, whether it could be work related or personal, that you can really make yourself feel like, I'm calling not for X, but I'm calling for something else. It's amazing. You probably heard a lot of people who call me and say, you were the only one who called people during COVID. You were the one who called people, whether it was in Spain, whether it was in Europe, whether it was in the US, and how you doing? How's your family? How's all this? And by the way, we were working, all of us, like 20 whatever, sometimes crazy hours the first few weeks, because everybody was asking us to lend money and these, but you have to be genuine and and do it. And so people know that it's not just about just a business. All I care for you is because you're getting me results, but it's also I care for you as an individual. I want the best for you in all different aspects, right? Professionally, but also as an individual, as a human being. And you got to show that it's humane, like he's again back to, that's probably another attribute I would talk about Jamie. I mean, he's very humane, I mean, don't think that he will make tough decisions and be very tough, but it's always in a respectful manner, right? And that's how people, you show that you care, that you really are more than just another part of the organization, another individual. And by the way, I know you generate a lot of fees and a lot of deals for us, and that's all I care. There has to be more than that.
And you mentioned during COVID, and it was something that people referenced. You picked up the phone, you phoned your leaders, checked in, people okay, and Lance, who we mentioned earlier, he speaks to that. He carries thank you cards with him. So whenever he's on a plane, there's people he wants to acknowledge and thank, he'll send them a thank you card. And both those examples are they're small things, but have such a huge impact on someone feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling that they, feeling that they, that they matter to an organization.
Yeah, well, listen, and I don't know. I mean, this is talking about when you ask about can you learn it? Are you born with it? I think it's just like, I don't know. I mean, if yes, it's a commitment of time. Yes, I could have been. My God, I don't need to spend another half an hour making phone calls, or to the guys in Europe, I got to do it in the morning because it's their afternoon, and the guys on the West Coast, I have to do it late in the afternoon here because of the times. But it's the kind of stuff that it goes. And it's not, for me, it's not like, oh my God, I'm trying to get myself, like, people to think I'm doing something, like I'm being a great leader or anything. But it's more like, it sort of like connects you to the organization and to the individuals in a different way that is, makes all of us better. The organization, myself, the individuals. And it's stuff that is so simple to do, yet a lot of people wouldn't do it. Right. And just like that, there's many things, like, when people are struggling, somebody's, oh, I heard somebody said to me, oh, he's whatever, his mom is very ill, or, his wife is having these difficulties. And I will always make the time to reach out to those people and do it, for example, on a regular basis. It wasn't just, the time that it was and that was it, forget about it. But it was kind of like, do it consistently. But I go back to, you have to be genuine. If you are not, don't even waste your time, because people can see through that.
100%. And when you mentioned, you talked about the ability to disagree, and I was curious around how do you disagree with people without being disagreeable, because that's something there with the EQ, being that being respectful. And bear in mind, we're all in conversations all the time where we maybe have an alternative view. How do you approach those situations?
Well, listen, it depends what kind of situation it is, right? If it's something like, he wants to promote somebody, or, if it's my boss making that decision, well, I will express my views, and I will do it in a, in a forum that is the right forum to sort of say, hey, X or Y and Z, I disagree, or I agree, or I think somebody else should be in that job. So do it in a way that sets itself for that. I mean, I would never be a believer of, oh my God, let me go and protest in public, and let me go create this chaos, and because that's really what, I want to express myself. I don't think that's in the best interest of the organizations. Now, if it's something that is more principles or legal issues, of course, I will go out more forceful and express why we wouldn't want to do, and try to convince people or try to influence people why we need to do a different, or why we need to take a different course. And that's how I would do it. I was never a believer, and I think it's terrible for any organization, the people that think like, I got to go and start saying to everybody, oh, I disagree with this, oh, I disagree with that, so the organization knows it. I think that's not necessarily good for the organization, and it's not good for the individuals, including if I was the one doing it, because it just creates unnecessary chaos in the organization.
Which is never helpful. And going back to Jamie, who is broadly regarded as one of the best leaders in the world. And I suppose I look at him from the outside in, and I wonder, does he have an off switch? Does he, a lot of leaders, they speak to the 24/7 commitment of the roles that they're in. Does he have an off switch? And if he does, what does he hit it with?
Well, listen, first of all, Jamie is a family man. That his off switch. He spends a lot of time with his family, and he's very committed to his family and his, kids and his wife. And he does that. He reads a lot. He's always reading. He does some his, walking and all that kind of stuff. But Jamie's 24/7 and always will be, and he's good at it, and he loves it. He thrives on it. And when you get the attention, and he could be he can also, whenever we are things or we're doing stuff on moments of a crisis, if we have to be there, he'll make the time, and we all there. We don't have to be there for unnecessary, just for people to be, showing like there's something going on. So he's very good at setting up time and prioritizations. Excellent. But he does his stuff, and does it well and enjoys it.
And out of interest for you, what were your off switches? Again, what is the fuel that's enabled you through your career to have to be able to thrive?
Well, listen, I would say, similar to that. Family for me is, always prioritizations, like, what I, need to do. And, I always used to tell people every Friday night I will have a date with the same woman I had for, 40 years now, my wife, no matter what, whether it's a crisis or not, even, in the Lehman Brothers, we will have something that afterwards we will meet and dinner. I run. That's my, every morning before work, and I always did it before because it's the only way to do it. It's always something will come up during the day, and that to me was the best way to sort of, like, in many ways, plan my days, have my own moment, do my, relief, and so stuff like that. And then, music. I will sit down and listen to music. Sometimes I have my time, and obviously I'm a reader, and I read whenever I have time on planes and all that, and always be my things that I would do. Always, never fiction, always biographies or some kind of, history books or some, current affairs. But those are the things that will keep me, I can get, focused on.
And where do you do your best thinking? Like where in terms of where does the ideation come, or are there certain places or spaces?
Most of the time when I'm running, that would be my best, because I'm, myself doing it, and that's when I, sort of like makes the running less painful, or doesn't feel as long, and as I'm doing through all the kind of stuff. Of course, then I will, sometimes if I'm in my car to the city, to my job, I will think about stuff there, write my notes and all these, and those are the things. I always was very much focused into having a very controlled agenda. Meaning I would always have my assistant have time in the mornings that I will have enough time for me to respond to any emails or phone calls, because I'm always a believer that you get back to people the same day that they get you, and I will do that, and that will give me also some time to maybe like something that came out that I thought about we should be doing, write myself or do something about it. Then I will do the same in the afternoons. So I will, do that on a consistent basis, and that gave me a lot of ability to really plan my days, my, weeks, because having that flexibility, which I never understand when people have, their agendas packed back to back, and that you don't even have time to really reflect or think about stuff that you would like to do. So those are things for me that I, were very good in my career.
So it
Very
is
helpful.
making it being very protective, as you said, having your assistant, block in time, so you've got that thinking space. Because otherwise, I'm assuming the day could just take a course of its own.
100%. I'm very much on that, and every day in the morning, so I could also be responsible, be responsive to people in terms of, people were looking for me or return whatever emails I needed to get back to, and somebody who needed an answer. Or, by the way, it could be an emergency or something. We have to make these decisions and all that. So that was always part of my, controlling my time, and I think that is probably one of the things that, is the most precious things as a, manager, as a leader, to have, is being able to control your time, to be able to do a lot of the stuff that, you have to do throughout the day or the week or whatever.
And I'm assuming that also links to prioritization, making sure you're in the meetings where you can offer something meaningful, being very thoughtful around where, what meetings you attend. So you always think, where's the highest and best use of my time?
Yeah, and I mean, to me also those meetings, there's some that obviously I have to be there, and obviously I will do all my preparation before the meetings, and I will never understand when people go to meetings with, you know, getting themselves over there up to speed in the meeting, because, and I would tell a lot of my management team, we go to the meetings to go through the issues and whatever issues we have, and then hopefully out of these we can come out with a solution or a plan how we're going to get the solution. But those are the things that back to, you talked about time, controlling your time, and I think you can do it, but it takes your own effort to do it. And the idea that you want to be everywhere and people ask you, I mean, there's some meetings that you don't have to be there, or some client pitches, you don't have, it will be great, but it's always back to the prioritization. It's
Yeah.
either X or Y. Something has to give. And I think, that's where you are the master of your own destiny there. You're on
Yeah.
controlling your time in an efficient, effective manner is critical.
And you spoke about preparation there, and Henry Fernandez, who we both know well, he uses the analogy of a book club. He said we wouldn't all arrive at the book club meeting and read chapter one. The expectation is we've all read chapter one, so when we're in the meeting, then we're having that discussion rather than we're all at different stages of prep.
Yeah, I mean, that is to me so critical, and is a must for any functioning management team, that people do their work. I mean, if I could do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea, well, I didn't have the time, or I was so busy. And, if I can do it, you can do it too. And then it goes back to better results, right? You don't need to have long meetings. If the meeting was scheduled for an hour, maybe you get it in 40 minutes or 45 minutes. And then you really focus on the outcomes that you really want to, come out of the meetings and implement or execute on. So it's something that is so, to me, must in a functioning management team.
It goes back to Henry's point, common sense, not always common practice. I don't think everyone builds in preparation time, but it's, to your point, it's important, and it requires people to be deliberate and intentional around it.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I mean, that would be my advice for a lot of people who run management teams, is you create a discipline where people all, at the end of the day, you go and, the time, I'm giving you back half an hour or whatever amount of time, you can make a lot out of that time. But, you put in your own time because you get in an output out of that. I mean, make it, for all of us, more productive. And, I think is something that, should be a must in every management team.
I think it speaks to your word respect as well. It's being respectful of other people's time. And there's a level of, if you haven't prepared, that isn't being respectful of others in the room.
100%. 100%.
I had a couple more questions, and they kind of go back to the human side. And I know you've got, is it three children? Three
Yes.
children? Yes. What advice have you given them over the years if they've been embarking on their own careers?
I mean, listen, I would tell my children, I have said that to a lot of people, and particularly when I used to go talk to the analysts of the training programs, what I would say is have a passion and apply yourself to that passion.
Mm.
And then I said, take your job or whatever you're doing seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously.
Mm.
And that's what I tell it, and with that, and I would say to them, listen, adversity will come. There's not a question whether you will have it. The question is when. And the most important is what you're going to learn out of it. What are the things that you will get? And because the best lessons in life is when you get adversity.
Mm.
And so I would tell them. Now you would say, well, that's very simple. That is so, ABC. That is like, the motherhood and apple pie. But it's so true. I mean,
Yeah.
I said, have a passion, whatever it is, and apply yourself. You are your own judge. You are realize your potential. What are the things you need to do, and that you feel satisfied, and you meant it. And when I talk about the take your job seriously, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't let it get to your head. I mean, success is intoxicating, and be careful with it, because I've seen so many that they let it go to their heads. And I mean, what if you're not the head of the group? What if the MDs? You're always going to define your yourself and your accomplishment because of X. Careful, because that could always be removed for a lot of different reasons, right? Those would be some of the words of advice.
And with the adversity piece, there's many entrepreneurs that I've, read their biographies, and they talk about the lessons learned come from the biggest failures. It's not from the successes, but it's those challenging times where you really learn who you are as a person as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think adversity is, I mean, we all have it in different ways, shapes, forms. And the question is, how do you deal with it when you get it?
Yeah.
And then ongoing, what kind of lessons do you learn from it? And the best lessons in life or businesses is when you get adversity. People are, oh my God, I wasn't ready for this crisis. Oh my God, we weren't ready for what if, we weren't ready for X. And then how you go out, and I think, and on an individual basis, obviously everybody does their own, reassessment of, oh my God, I should have thought about that. I should have done it different, and whatever it is. And I think that's, to me, the thing is, like, the worst you can do is deny it or pretend it doesn't exist. And then you go on, what should I do? What should I go do a mark to market, a reassessment? Why? And then what should I be doing next? And think about what else? What if next time something else? So those would be very, simple, basic, I would say, trainings.
But hugely practical as well. And if you master those, then life is going to work out pretty well for you.
100%. And by the way, and even like that, it might not work 100%, but it will be much, much easier to deal with than, just throw up your arms and it's always frustration, and, you didn't get what you wanted.
And I think the adversity piece is what's the mindset you choose, because you're always in choice in terms of how you approach those situations.
Yeah, 100%.
And my last question is, if we put ourselves in the shoes of your parents and then looking at you, what do you think they're most proud of?
Well, listen, I think my parents is still alive. I know my dad will be 97 this year, and my mom is 87. I mean, I think they just, like, they're proud of what I have done, what I accomplished. They will say, you never changed. You're still the same that when you were 17, 16, you were a very driven, very focused in school, always, applying yourself, what it was, treating people the same way, as you started growing, elevating, the way you treated people back then, the way you treat people today. So those are the things that they would say, like, we're very proud of what you've done, but most importantly, that you never change. You're still the same, and that's probably what they would tell you if you ask them.
Well, that's a wonderful. The fact is that consistency. You stay true to who you are.
Yeah, that has been one of my things. I joke to people, like, if you ever want to do a due diligence on me, all you have to do is pick up a phone and call somebody at JPMorgan or 350,000, or people who left JPMorgan, because I mean, there's many Carlos Hernandez at JPMorgan, as you can imagine. It's a pretty common name, but everybody, oh, Carlos Hernandez. I said, I just did the same everywhere all the time, and the way I behaved myself 20 years ago is the same way it was 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and today, and that's the way it will be. And for me, makes me feel realized. It's great, and could I have done things different? Of course, there's always stuff that I should have done different and all these, but people ask me now, would you have done the same thing you did at JPMorgan? I said, if I was 22 years old today, I would be doing exactly what I did, and I would not change one bit. Because I mean, like everybody said, you wouldn't have changed anything. I said, you know what? Because I said, that's like traders. When they have a position, the only thing it can go up. This never can go the other way. I said, that's what worked for me. And why would I change it? I mean, everybody wants to pick, like, it's like, you got to go back and change X, change Y, and remind yourself of the beautiful movie, It's a Wonderful Life. This is what you have. This is the hand you had. This is what you made, and you made the most out of it. And I will do the same. If I was 22, hopefully we'll have the same, path with, met with many, many wonderful people, bosses, peers, people that work with me, competitors, clients, people like you. And I will take the same thing, many times over.
What a wonderful, there's a great book on the, people when they get to their, 90s and 100s, what they regret in life. And many people have many regrets, but listening to you, there's just such a wonder in terms of you've lived a life with intention, you've been the conscious creator of your life, and there's no regrets. And what a wonderful place to be in.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, this is where, for me, when I was my retirement and my whole rationale and all that was, first of all, every story has an end, whether it's a book, whether it's a movie, whether it's a career and all that. And I said I wanted to have my own ending, to make the best ending to the story. And I also think, that, I never been on a deathbed myself, but one day when I am, I can imagine that people at that time themselves, they will say, well, I wish I would have done another IPO. I wish I would have done another M&A. I wish I would have done another trip to X. But it would be, I wish I would have done more with my family and all that. And for me, it will be, did I make a difference in this life? And I would like to say to myself, yes, I did, either by helping, like JPMorgan, be a better place, helping a lot of people along the way, becoming better, realizing their successes or their potential, that, a family that was, good children develop and done well, good to society and all that. That would be my, sort of like, when I'm in that moment, and those are the questions that I will ask myself, and those are the answers I will give. So.
You have made a difference, and you've made a difference to me personally. I can't thank you enough for all the time you spent with me as you inputted into the book. And as I've shared with you before, I leave every conversation up leveled, energized, a different person for hearing your lessons, because those sound bites are the things that are really ignite and move me into action and have taken me on completely different pathways. So thank you for that.
A pleasure.
Thank you, Carlos. This is wonderful. You were so incredible, as I knew you would be, and you've just got such a beautiful way of articulating your thoughts and your stories and your lessons in a way that's just, it's so palatable and easy to connect to. That it's very relatable.
Happy that I was able to do it for you, and looking forward to it. And I know you're going to have many others, and but this was great. Thank you very much for asking me to do it.
Well, no, thank you for making time, because it really means a lot. Thank you.
Terrific, Georgie. Well, I'll see you in a few weeks or whenever you're back in New York.
Perfect. Look forward to it. Thanks, Carlos.
All the best. Take care,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.